name is Tim Judah. I'm the economist correspondent for the Balkans, and thank you all very much for coming. And well, as you know, it's been a very interesting and not to say exciting conference so far. We're here on quite an auspicious day, the Balkans from security problem to security partner. I mean, I say auspicious because today is a day which will, I think, tell us which way we're going when it comes to security problem or security partner. I only need to just hold up a copy of today's Blitz and you'll know what I'm talking about. Stop NATO, says the barricade in Rudare in the north of Kosovo. And I think that a lot will hang on what happens, a lot will depend, actually, with regard to the questions we've been asked, on what will happen. So I'm hoping that that will be picked up by our panelists and the questions. Just to remind you, what are the lessons learned in the Balkans regarding conflict transformation, state building, nurturing of security cooperation? Actually, a lot has been done in terms of security cooperation. We can think of everything from police cooperation, certainly between Serbia and Croatia, the setting up or the planned setting up of a police cooperation centre, and also for the rest of the region. And I think that there's also quite a lot of military cooperation, certainly in training of officers, but although that's not necessarily widely known. How applicable are these lessons to other regions such as North Africa or the post-Soviet space? Fashionable question. Personally, I don't think that there is much relevance, but well, let's see what our panelists have to say. And what could be the role of the Balkans in a global strategic environment in the next decade? Well, good question, but as somebody said, I think in the first panel, that if you had a crystal ball, or in the first panel that I went to, that if you had a crystal ball and on the 1st of January you had predicted where we would be today, everyone would have thought you were crazy. So good luck to anyone thinking where we're going to be in a decade. Anyway, we've got a lot to get through, and our first speaker is going to be Karl Lammers, who's the Deputy Chairman of the Defence Committee of the German Parliament. Now, Mr. Lammers is going to speak first, and then he has to leave early because of his flight. So over to you, Mr. Lammers.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this high-level conference, the first ever Belgrade Security Forum. I would like first to express my gratitude to those who have organized this conference, to Ms. Sonja Licht, President of the Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence, Ms. Bobic, Ms. Stojanovic, and furthermore the head of the offices of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in Serbia, Montenegro, Mr. Henri Bonnet. For me, it is my third stay here in Belgrade. The last was 8 years ago, and since this time, much has changed. Much has changed, especially since the end of the violent conflicts that had its origin in the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. The region has achieved real progress. Serbia has achieved real progress. Balkans, Serbia today is a different place. We are here today to talk about the future of the Western Balkans region and its way from security problem to security partner. These days, when people talk about Europe, and so please apologize as I have to go back to Germany, as we have discussions about European problems in these days too. You know, we speak about especially the problems relating to the Eurozone. This is a vital issue, but we all should not forget that Europe started as a deeply political project with one aim: sustaining peace in Europe. And I also and always remember Helmut Kohl, the former Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, who always said, Europe, that means peace. And I think he is right. In this context, the Western Balkans region has a special meaning for the European Union and especially for Germany too. This region lies at the heart of Europe, and the stability here is important for our security too. Much too often this region was part of violence and of war. People have witnessed terrible fright. My vision of a Europe whole, free and at peace, cannot be complete until the countries of the Western Balkans region are stable and secure. This is one of the most important issues with regards to foreign affairs of European Union and of my country. We all support you in your endeavors in this region. This is, on the one hand, because these reforms will bring freedom and prosperity to the people, but also because the region could become a role model for other nations which are yearning to change and democratize their political systems. We are currently witnessing dramatic changes in Northern Africa and the Middle East. Those protests of hundreds of thousands of especially young people evoke emotions, and I think we see people fighting and looking for a better perspective, for better education, for a better future. I for myself will leave Germany on Sunday to go to Tunisia to make a fact-finding missions in the framework of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, to ask what we can do to assist them if they ask for this assistance. I think that is very important, to think what we can do, how we can use our experience of transformation of a social order into another to bring people assistance in building up democratic structures. We all share their hope, the hope in Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and all the other countries to become functioning democracies, or in the first step to build up democratic structures. And we hope that the freedom and rights we all enjoy in our countries will take root in their region too. Many countries in Europe, in the Western Balkans and your country, have shown that such a development is possible. I know that you cannot really compare the situation here or in some other countries in the neighborhood with the situation in Africa, but the adoption of new constitution, the organizing of free elections, the installation of new institutions, these were some of the essential stages in that process, as it is today in Northern Africa. The experience which were made in this region here can help now to support the countries in this part of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we all are aware that the period which followed the armed conflict in the Balkans was not free of tensions, but the events which might have affected the stability of the regions were all managed peacefully. I think of the independence of Montenegro, the inter-ethnic tensions in the former Yugoslavic Republic, the effects of the international financial crisis, Kosovo's declaration of independence. Those events were all managed peacefully. What were the reasons for this? The effect of violence on the collective consciousness of people in this region, the punishment of the principal offenders, the reform process which was initiated, the re-establishment of close ties between neighboring countries, the consciousness of shared values, European values. These are all factors that helped to stabilize the region. All these factors are important now for a new role of the Balkans in the global strategic environment and a security partner in the Euro-Atlantic community. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a globalized world, and I think we all know and feel that no country for itself is able to master the challenges and to solve the problems of today and of the future. So I think the most important issue is to cooperate, to stand together. And so there is a good sentence that is, cooperation is no option, cooperation is the only alternative. That is why European Union and I think NATO are essential for our common future. And this is to make it clear why we see the future of the Balkans region within the EU and for many countries in NATO too. This forum, the Belgrade Security Forum, is very important. And I think it is at the right time to discuss all these questions very open-minded. We are at a point in time when the EU member states decide to close accession negotiations with Croatia. That is great. The accession is foreseen for the 1st July 2013. Albania and Montenegro have confirmed as candidate countries. And Serbia will hopefully get the candidate status in a few weeks at the end of the year, and maybe opening the negotiations. But we are also at a point of time where a number of important challenges remain. The necessity to overcome political stalemate in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The name issue in the former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia, as well as to enhance the good dialogue which has started between Belgrade and Pristina. Moreover, the rule of law, freedom of expression, the rights, the fight against corruption, and most of all, good neighborly relations are still major challenges throughout this region. Especially Serbia stands before an important threshold. The country plays a very important role here in this region. The European Commission will publish its opinion regarding a candidate status in a few days. Then all countries of the European Union will make their decision, and maybe on the 15th of December there will be a decision of the heads of states and government. Germany stands at your side. We give you a clear European perspective. And as our Chancellor said, we need you in Europe, and we will support you on your way in this Euro-Atlantic integration. But to become member of the European Union, there is still some way to go, and some more work and reforms to be done. I spoke about this yesterday with the Minister of Interior, with the President of your Parliament and some other officials. And we fully agreed to this. And I think that is very important. There cannot be any shortcuts in meeting the Copenhagen criteria. You see what happens if they will not be fulfilled. Furthermore, during the summer and in these days, conflicts re-emerged, which we would have liked to be seen as solved. And so I fully support the endeavor of your government and of all in the region to solve all these problems peacefully. That is the most important message from my side and from us, to do this in this way. The Chancellor, Angela Merkel, said on 23rd of August, progress in the question of Kosovo is necessary. The way to Europe passes through European ways of solving disputes. Through dialogue and with eyes set on common future within the EU, I think we are on a good way. And Serbia has to, and I am convinced, will assume its responsibility for regional stability. Ladies and gentlemen, as Deputy Chairman of the Defense Committee, as you mentioned, and President of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, let me speak a few words about NATO. EU integration is very important. I think NATO is very important too. NATO enlargement has contributed substantially to the security of the Allies. The prospect of future enlargement and the spirit of cooperative security have advanced stability in Europe more broadly. The door for enlargement remains open. That is a very important message. Remains open to all European democracies which share the values of our alliance, which are willing and able to assume the responsibilities and obligations of membership, and whose inclusion can contribute to common security and stability. 3 countries of the Balkan region have already walked through this open door. I think of Slovenia, of Croatia, and of Albania. Macedonia stands at the threshold. With Montenegro, as well as Bosnia and Herzegovina, 2 countries of the Western Balkans have been invited to participate in the Membership Action Plan. And we fully understand that not every country in the region has aspirations for NATO membership. But I had meetings here with Deputy Minister of Defense and some others. And I understand that you are willing, that you are ready to cooperate with NATO in the framework of Partnership for Peace and of the individual Partnership Action Plan. We cooperate together. And I think this will draw many benefits from cooperation for your country too. So I think regarding to EU and NATO, we are on a good way. Concluding, my vision for the Western Balkans region is clear. Euro-Atlantic integration is the best guarantee for peace, for progress and prosperity. But further change is necessary, first and foremost within the region. Only when good neighborly relations exist, the integration of all countries of the Western Balkans will be successful. Jean Monnet, one of the European Union founding fathers, used to say that everyone is ambitious. The question is if he is ambitious to do something. And I think we will do. So the Western Balkans may have had a difficult history, but I sincerely believe that they will be able to close this page and to become, in a very near future, an important security partner. Germany will stand at Serbia's side to assist the people in achieving these goals. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lim, thank you very much. Normally, obviously, we would have questions at the end, but because you have to go to the airport, I would propose, if with your agreement, perhaps I can ask you one question and maybe one question from the floor before you have to leave. Is that all right? Thank you. I would just like to ask one question, which I think is what everybody here would really like to know. I mean, you've made a ringing endorsement of Germany standing behind Serbia. But when Mrs. Merkel was here last week, well, sorry, not last week, recently, it was a little bit unclear when it came to this issue of candidacy. She said, no candidacy unless parallel institutions, let's not get into whether they're parallel or not, are dismantled in Kosovo. Well, she said, they have to be the beginning of the process, so it was kind of a bit unclear. What's your understanding of what could happen in October and Germany's position?
I think the position of our Chancellor was very clear. We are looking forward to an integration of Serbia into EU. We respect the achievements you made in the last years, in the last months, in the last weeks, and going to the 12th of October to fulfill the criteria. And then she spoke about Kosovo, about peaceful solution, about dealing with this question in a pragmatic way. Right. And I think I got the impression here during my very deep discussions, especially with the Minister of Interior, the Deputy Prime Minister, that your country is aware of this necessity to deal with this question peacefully and to develop this step by step. So I think from the German aspect, we are on the way and on the path to the integration into the EU.
So step by step would secure a German yes for candidacy if it was recommended by the Commission?
I think my statement was very clear. If all these things are fulfilled, and I say no shortcomings, but I think you are on a very good way to fulfill this, and especially in these days and in these hours. Okay. I felt there was a very critical situation. You are ready and willing to see what is necessary to fulfill the preconditions to get to get the candidate status and the opening of negotiations.
Okay, well, I think we can have one question, and then you have to go to the airport. Oliver Ivanovic.
Thank you very much.
Explain who you are as well.
Oliver Ivanovic, a State Secretary in the Ministry for Kosovo in Metohija, and you can imagine the question is related to Kosovo. You just mentioned a couple of times in the very short and brief introductory word, mentioned a peaceful resolution of the situation in Kosovo. The peaceful, how the word peaceful goes along with sending the troops to the north to resolve something what the Kosovo Albanians consider unresolved. And we also think that we have to resolve that. But we started, the dialogue in Brussels, and we are, the last we have been expecting is that someone will decide in a unilateral way to take the troops and solve the issue. And the second, my question is about the so-called parallel structure. You probably know that those structures are the single one. There is no alternative. There is no any other structure in which the Serb community in Kosovo believe. And that's not that. From our point of view, that's not a parallel. From that point of view, I would just prefer to have a little bit more, let's say, careful approach, because that could be very dangerous for the remaining Serbs in Kosovo.
Thank you very much. I think it is very difficult to go into details here, as this is an issue for the negotiations. But what the Chancellor said is, we speak of parallel structures, and we have to evaluate where these parallel structures are. But I think the message of the Chancellor was clear, that we support both sides, Kosovo and Serbia, under the umbrella and in the framework of the European Union, to make a dialogue. I think that is very important, to speak about all these questions and to find, besides the decision relating to status questions, to find a pragmatic way to deal with these questions. I think that is in our interest in doing this and demonstrating the willingness and the readiness to do this, and they do it on both sides, I think, I hope, and we are sure. Then I think we are on a good way to say they fulfill the criteria and they are able and ready to join the Euro-Atlantic structures.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and bon voyage from all of us. And now we will carry on with the rest of the panel. So, but thank you very much indeed, and thank you for taking those questions a little bit out of the ordinary. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, now we're going to hear from Ariane Starova, the Vice Minister of Defense from Albania. So, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. First, ladies and gentlemen, dear organizer of this forum, let me extend a great thanks for your presence here and great thanks for the organizers to have invited me here and to give me the possibility to share some views and to have the possibility to make a discussion at the end of this panel session about the issues out. Of course, I had in mind to talk longer than I have decided to, but I will try to keep within 5-6 minutes. So I'm starting with a couple of ideas I had to explore in more details, but just mentioning the titles as premises of the problems I will try to discuss later. First, of course, we share the same opinion, and I'm convinced about that, despite some individual voices probably not here or outside this hall who might not agree with this. First, in our Western Balkans, we are under completely new conditions, and we are under new conditions for cooperations, and at the same time we have new horizons for cooperation in the future. Second, I'd like to say that all the Balkan countries have given a substantial contribution, not only for the regional security here, but even for the regional international security abroad. In a way or the other, some more, some less, some in a more specific way, some in the other more vague ways, but all are cooperating with international security organism to give their contribution to the international peace and security. That's also, I presume that we share, all of us. I'm not going to mention which are the arguments behind the first, let's say, idea of a new condition for cooperation and of the substantial contribution the Balkans is going to give about the international security and regional security. So I'm going right in the problems, I think, which remain till today and probably for some time in the future, which are problems linked with the security. I refrain myself or keeping myself far from using the words conflicts, but let's say security problem, because I believe that, as I said in the beginning, it's quite a new situation. First, we have three problems, according to my opinion, are still closely linked with the ethnic ideologies. And it is, I'm trying to be direct and open, recognition of Kosovo by Serbia, institutional functionality of Bosnia and Herzegovina, third as 2 or 3 communities, and the dispute between Greece and Macedonia over the name of Macedonia. The recognition of Kosovo by Serbia, which is the heart, or let's say the focal point of any discussion, even of what is the concern of many, will be happening in North Mitrovica, and I believe nothing will happen serious because all the parties and the international community are attached to the dialogue and peaceful means, and this is repeated many, many times, even by Serbia itself. The recognition of Kosovo by Serbia is not a condition of the EU, but the sooner the better, I think, because the EU can't import security problems. It is important in view of the common regional future that Serbia is not the last country to recognize Kosovo as a new reality in the Balkans. This is more imperative for the European countries as well, which have not done so far. Our Balkan region should try its best to resolve the present paradox when, on one side, the region is exporting security in distant regions, and on the other side remains still stuck to some complicated security problems I just mentioned. Another problem which is linked and probably derivative of this is that, and probably it might result parallelly by this, inclusion of Kosovo as a new reality in the regional cooperation processes and initiative. If the current dialogue, Serbia-Kosovo, is going as a question of principle, it would be inconsistent to continue that all-inclusive dialogue in all, it would be consistent to continue that all-inclusive dialogue in all the other cooperation forums in the region. It would be an extension of this dialogue, which is so much praised in all the directions and from all the sides and from the international community. To our like or our dislike, another problem, in our region there are still remaining nationalist mentalities, and they are unfortunately more elite connected. The peoples have already shown that they are, all the peoples in the region, they are capable of constructing good, even excellent relations in our region. It is the duty of our political elites to not to remain stuck to old paradigms of political action. Sometimes we hear, not only in Serbia, not only in Albania, not only, let's say, in this or that country, but anywhere, that politicians use this or that declaration and say, because of the electorate. That's wrong, I think. It's time to start to change this. Politicians cannot be guided by public nationalist opinions, but they must guide and teach them the new mentalities and ideas of a global world. That's very important, to my opinion, in order to try to cope with this big challenge. Another problem for the region is the fight against crime and corruption. Of course, it's a big issue. It's not only for our region. It's not that our region has not done very much in this direction, and that's one of the examples of excellent cooperation, but this is always a challenge for a future, and maybe for a very far or distant future, because, as it is known, law is always in fight with, let's say, outlaws and illegal activities. Of course, I would like to say a couple of words of North Mitrovica as a problem. I heard Oliver saying here in his question that it's unilateral intervention or unilateral action and sending armed forces and so on. Of course, these are elements of a state. It is a new state, but I don't think that the use of force there is a guide in the reality there. And it's a big, let's say, intermediary, which is international community, is not allowing that. But as Kosovo is a new entity and has sovereignty, of course they have to do something about that. On the other side, there is evidence, as I know, that there are activities, or there was activities there which were linked with organized crime and corruption. I'm not accusing Serbs or Albanians, but a new state is encouraged by the international community to try to impose there the rule of law. And the rule of law there is to the benefit not only of Kosovo, of Serbia, to all the region. I had also some lessons learned about the reasons, but I'm stopping here because I have to respect the time.
Thank you.
And I'm available for question later.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best thing to do. Let's keep it moving, and then we'll have a lively debate afterwards. And I'm sure there'll be some questions relating to that last point. Okay, well, we're now going to be moving on to Johan Pucher from he's the Defence Policy Director from the Ministry of Defence in Vienna. So, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will approach the issue, the Balkans, from a security problem to a security partner from the perspective of an Austrian official. Yesterday we had an extremely interesting panel about European security policy and perspective. It was about megatrends, the future of Euro, the future of the European Union. And I asked myself, what do such possible scenarios, I don't buy them all, what do these scenarios mean for Southeast European states? Change will come, that's evident. Are they mere figures at the chess game? Are they passive observers? Or can they be relevant actors? What conclusions can be drawn? Which policy might be pursued? What role for partnership in that context? We know Western Balkans has been considered an area of instability, and progress has been made. We know that all visible progress is there. The national rhetoric of the 90s has largely been replaced by commitments of most regional leaders to resolve open territorial and ethnic issues through dialogue and compromise. Some shining examples, Croatia and Slovenia. But the case is not yet closed, not everything clear. This showed also today's discussion. EU membership and NATO membership, extremely important. Pull factor kept the whole region together. Is this pull factor still working? The question. But in this framework, we see still the umbrella, the overarching umbrella of this membership not yet waterproof. There's blockages, hurdles, obstacles, and they impede partnership in this region. This should be solved, must be solved. So what does partnership mean in this framework? Partnership requires common interest. You marry something because you have a common interest. Common goals, not yet clear. Not yet clear. Strategic choices have to be made in that respect. And this is about building up trust and confidence. And we had yesterday a panel with the Visegrad group, and these gentlemen elaborating on this partnership model said, in a priority is trust and confidence. And the next step is then some concrete material outcome. Partner with whom? Now it's predominantly bilateral, from countries in the region with partners outside. But there's the necessity of partnership in the region, amongst the countries. However, you can only be a reliable partner if stability exists at home. Unreliable partner, changing, different opinion, different approaches, it's difficult then to build up a reliable partnership. Financial crisis and budget constraints that we all face should be used as a trigger for partnership and cooperation, as it is the case also in other regions of Europe. And partnership here in this region may serve an overriding political goal. We face a growing degree of dominance by big states in the European Union. Smaller states face difficulties for diplomacy. President Tadic has alluded to that yesterday. And it makes it difficult to safeguard the interest. So therefore, in essence, I argue for security partnership as the only reasonable basis for development, and this has nothing to do with sentimental feelings, it is interest. My points in that respect are: overcome tendencies of frustration or self-isolation, even when encountering setbacks, and there will be setbacks. It takes time. Refrain from nationalistic, ethnocentric attitudes. With this, you cannot build up partnerships. And do not fall into the trap of dominance or leadership seduction in partnership. It's equal, same phase, same level, and not dominance. If France and Germany could manage it, I think also Croatia and Serbia can manage it. In what areas of security partnership do I see potentials that might be developed to be respected, to be relevant, and to strengthen your position individually or collectively? Coming from Austria, and we have strong geopolitical, historical, cultural, economical links, huge diaspora. Some say if the wind blows in this particular region, the leaves are shaking in Vienna. Consequences of war and instability are immediately felt. So what do the Austrian population expect from this region? No military conflict anymore. That's absolute priority. No ethnic, religious strife. We overcame it in some parts of Europe hundreds of years ago. No uncontrolled migration. Cutting the networks of organized crime. Curtailing human trafficking. We need functioning jurisdiction, property rights and guarantees for investment return. So this would be the framework in which partnership might prosper from the Austrian point of view. We should not start from the perception that security partnership would not yet exist. There's a lot ongoing. But we have to continue and deepen it. And let me get a little bit more in substance. The military. After the war, it was logically to get the military under control, democratic control, success. Generally, the military is a respected institutions in all these countries. And there's potential for further partnership and development. The logical step was then that these countries started to contribute forces for international operations, to contribute to peace and stability, and this is most visible. It's an excellent record. All countries are in ISAF. Perhaps it's a price to pay. But there's more room. Training, sharing facilities, pooling, exercises, long-term calendar planning in that respect, procurement. Go beyond the Croatian Macedonian unit for Afghanistan military police. Pool resources like medical units, disaster relief, airspace control. Do not make the mistakes like other countries, Central Europe did. Do it together. Maritime control. Why not the battle group from the southeastern European countries at the end of this decade? European Defence Agency. Who is hindering you to collectively knock at the door? This would enable you to build up capacities. I need 1 minute for the internal security. Because this is normal, what we spoke now about the military. This is somehow the trend. But as I alluded to that, what the Austrian people are expecting was very much connected with internal security, to be a partner in that field. There's big need, big potential. It is about organized crime, corruption with eroding effects on trust and state institutions, trafficking, and preventive measures against terror. It was mentioned already, the cooperation of the Ministry of Interior between Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia in that respect. Austria did a lot during her EU presidency, police cooperation, Convention for Southeast Europe, Friends of the Salzburg Forum, and so on. But I ask myself, are the structures in this field as well developed as in the military field? And I think there's room for improvement, there's room for further streamlining, further cooperation, because this will show also your partnership in this field. I would put emphasis on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because I think that this audience is the type of audience which will be interested in this. I'm seeing from tweets and elsewhere that Kosovo customs and police officers are at those gates in the north. I can't confirm it, but I'm just telling you what is coming through on various Twitter feeds. Okay, so over to you, Jim Soroka, professor at Auburn University. Thank you very much.
I have the advantage as an academic in that I can look at the big picture, I can also change my mind, and I can also speak bluntly rather than having to be careful about what nuances I give. So I think I have a great position to be in, and I very much appreciate the invitation to be here. What I want to talk about is one of the questions that was introduced to the panel, and that is the lessons learned. But I want to expand it and to take a look at the lessons that we thought we learned, the lessons that we shouldn't have learned, the lessons that we forgot to learn, and then to really remind you that everyone who participated, from the countries involved, from the neighbors, from the United States, NATO, the European countries, and the European Union, we all learn different lessons, and we're all applying different lessons. So it's a very, very complicated kind of thing. I think at the beginning we really had some horrendous examples from the 1990s. Some of them were tactical, some strategic, some policy. The multinational communities of the US, NATO, and the European Union really took a long time to cooperate with one another. There wasn't a policy consensus. And I would argue there still isn't a policy consensus. There were no consistent rules of engagement. There was no clear or consistent expectations. There were no clear or final objectives, no clear missions, and no clear end state as well. And then finally, there was no single chain of command. Everything was quite confused. But I think the most important lesson that I think the multinational community, including the United States, did learn is that security is meaningless if individuals are not secure in their homes. I think that's the fundamental kind of question, the fundamental lesson that we learned. Now, I'm an optimist, and I think that the response of the international community, particularly the European Union, NATO, and the United States, has been quite positive. The policy that has been put together for the region has been concrete. It has been a policy that impacts individuals, particularly young individuals, to participate. And it offered a vision of progress and inclusion in Europe. In addition, the policy that was articulated early about 2000 and 2001 has been sustainable. It has been long-term. It's being followed today. It has been cooperative, and it's been comprehensive. The United States, EU, NATO, and the OSCE are on the same page and have been for at least a decade. Most significantly, the policy that the international community has advanced has encouraged regional leaders to move towards integration, both in the security realm and in the economic realm with the European Union, and that if they make those hard choices, they will be rewarded. And I think the best example of that is the European Union visa accords with the nations in the region. And they really got across the message through the PFP and later through the MAP process in NATO that you are all welcome in collective security should you do so. Now, one lesson that was not well learned was that security needs to be multi-sectoral. It needs to involve the judiciary, it needs to involve anti-corruption, it needs to involve the police, border control, etc. And the response that the international community made was reactive rather than proactive. And I think they continue to do that today. And if we want to extend to North Africa, I see the same problem. We'll wait till corruption becomes a problem, and then we'll address it. But the reality is, these are problems that you can foresee and you need to solve before they become very serious. Overall, however, I think the United States, NATO, and the European Union did not turn their back on the region, did not decide to exclude it, and a lot of progress has been made. Now, some lessons that are not shared include the following. For the United States, internal Western Balkan issues are not a core U.S. interest. I was reading this morning an interview that the Serbian ambassador in Germany gave to the European Observer. And he said, "We are waiting for the United States to take the lead in Kosovo." I think that's a mistake. In the United States, we view these regional security issues, correctly or incorrectly, and I think largely incorrectly, as just too complex to deal with, and that they can't be solved in our lifetime. There are still members of the security community in the United States that say, these age-old animosities, we can't deal with it. It's going to take 500 years for these to be solved, and I disagree on that. I think too many European interests, and particularly European capitals, and I think in the EU as well, perceive that the United States' influence is critical and that if things get serious, we will take the lead. I don't see that happening. If anyone needs to take the lead, it needs to be the European members, either the European members of NATO and or the European Union itself. A lesson that wasn't learned is that security needs to be multi-sectoral, and it needs to be multi-sectoral at the very beginning, both coordinative and comprehensive. Yesterday, the Assistant Secretary General from NATO talked about the need for cyber warfare to move from defense and deterrence. I argue that for regional security issues, you need to do the same as well. You need to think of regional security like a disaster. It's a human disaster. And the response is prevention, recovery, and mitigation. There needs to be a security framework at the beginning, and it doesn't need to be ad hoc. I think, for example, there needs to be a clear end state. We've had 17 years of the Dayton Accords, and there's no end state at this point. The security architecture needs to know how to separate the urgent from the important, and at some point deal with the important. And finally, the last point I want to make very quickly is that the question about the future of the Western Balkans is the wrong question. I think a regional identity is important, but the first step, and this is the step, for example, the Slovenes take, is to first integrate into Europe and then to capitalize on your strengths on a regional level. If you start with the region first, you're going to paper over your differences and never capitalize on your strength. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for keeping it brief. You're passing the baton to Žarko Pohovský, professor of philosophy from Zagreb, a voice well-known here in Belgrade, throughout the former Yugoslavia, and the first of our panelists, obviously, who has lived the trauma of the last 20 years in this region. So over to you, Professor Pohovský.
Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to use the opportunity to discuss some of these terms that were given to us as some kind of homework with the title of the session. First of all, the title starts with the idea of partnership in security problems. The problem with this terminology is that we are under constant pressure of phraseology, which chokes every possibility of normal communication and thinking. There is no partnership between rich and poor, between mighty and weak, between master and apprentice, between teacher and the student. This so-called partnership is a bad diplomatic joke. The same way you can hear in Croatia every 6 months when some of these deputy undersecretaries of American State come to Croatia, that Croatia and the United States of America have relations of partnership. Of course no one believes this, but it's nice to say that. It's a kind of pedagogical tool, but it's not helping, because it's hiding the truth. There is no partnership. There can be no partnership. The colleague has just said, they're all the time expecting leadership. You do not expect leadership from your partner, but from someone else. And you expect leadership because you cannot cope with your problems. Some of these problems are not just yours. Some of the very unpleasant problems in this region came and are coming from outside. In the very strong competition of primitive ethno-nationalistic programs, the most primitive has come from Greece against Macedonia. And the competition again in this area is very strong in this context. When you read the analysis of organizations like Transparency International, you'll find out that they always mention Finland as one of the best, 5 best states in terms of anti-corruption climate in this society. But the same state is exporting corruption, not only to the Baltic states, but to Slovenia and to Croatia. It's very interesting and symbolically relevant. Patria is the name for corruption in our area. Not only coming from Finland, of course. But this is the way to tackle another aspect which was a few times mentioned here only on the margins. The essence of security is, of course, individual security, but individual security in social life. After the war, we have in this area people in northern Kosovo, who have problems in surviving, and other people who this surviving in other parts of the region understand in purely economic terms, not in military terms. And this is quite a difference. Although you'll hear them saying it's about surviving. But one aspect is in economic crisis. Another one is under the threat of tanks or whatever military equipment from whichever side it's coming. This is why I think we have to be very careful using these terms. This is why, paradoxically enough, the most important lesson we had to learn from the events in this area in the last 20 years is a very simple one. Do not love thy neighbor. If you can tolerate, but do not love. Because love is a tricky feeling which can quite simple wither away or can turn into something opposite. Whoever had any kind of experience with divorce can tell you that. And we have seen this. Neighbors hugging themselves 3 times a week, and then after 2 weeks hugging themselves with knives in their hands. So try not to hug the neighbor. Step back and understand that after the war there is a very simple, again not very pleasant, message. Hate, but do not kill. There is no love after war. The very good thing with the war, if there is a good thing, is there is not much love left. And you have to understand that hatred cannot be realized with violence. No violence is what we have learned from the war. Whoever has survived this war knows that living without explicit violence is a gift of normality. And then we'll start discussing all the other levels like systematic violence or structural violence or whatever aspects that can be important. When we forget this, and after 20 years we start forgetting these things, or 15 years in biggest part of this area, we'll try to organize a new life. Post-war life with new values in terms of European Union or other associations, but with very critical mind toward the world which is surrounding us. Because if we accept in Croatia or in Serbia or in Macedonia, Brussels the way Moscow was accepted in 1945, it's going to be another tragedy. If we do not see severe mistakes within European unions, there is no point in trying to become a member of European Union. This is why I always say that politicians, diplomats, and even many sociologists dealing with public analysis do not understand that there is no real relation between Eurosceptics and pro-Europeans. There are Europhobes, Europhiles, and Eurosceptics. The only normal guys are Eurosceptics. They ask the questions how, why, what, where, and then accept something that's normal and necessary for our countries, which is European Union, but not without asking questions. If we can do this, we can introduce a climate of security in public opinion and in some other aspects. And then, of course, there is the last question, which I think is also important in this context. There is no region anymore as we knew it. There is no Western Balkans anymore. The Western Balkans is not as Western as it was because Croatia is out. In fact, it's out already. Formally, it's going to be out in 18 months. And there is going to be another structure of the region, another relations within the region. And if you live in Croatia or try to follow what the media show and politics shows, this, what we call region, is absolutely of no interest for Croatia anymore. Croatia is oriented toward Brussels. It's not a very good thing, but it's true. So you have to organize things within new region, in new relations, starting with, I still think, the best problem, which I think the colleague is going to tackle now, which is the structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina, with relations of Serbia and Kosovo. Again, a question very obvious to our colleague from Germany, who spoke here, as a paradox. On behalf of Germany, they have perfect right to say whatever they want on Serbia and Kosovo relations. However, they do not have that right on behalf of European Union, because European Union does not have policy in this matter, because there are members of European Union that still do not accept Kosovo as an independent state. So it is, again, a question which cannot be solved by saying European Union has said, or Roma locuta causa finita. In this respect, I suggest a bit more critical thinking, not only in relation to local politicians, but to the politicians all over the world.
Thank you very much indeed. The baton now passes to Selmot Sikutic, Minister of Defense of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I see from your biography that you are going to talk about security, but it's interesting to hear about security from somebody who actually has fought as a soldier, and I see from your biography that you fought as a soldier in 1993. Thank you. Well, I think that's just an interesting to hear from someone who knows what it's like on the ground. Anyway, over to you, Mr. Sikutic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I might say that everything related to today's topic has already been said, but not by everyone. So I do have a few remarks and arguments to share with you and other colleagues from the panel. I believe there are some aspects or majority of remarks that I could agree with, that have already been shared with you, and some of them that I see a little bit differently from the colleagues that have already expressed themselves. Let me start with a globally relevant aspect of any security posture and region, and that is the overall speed of change. We live in a time where the speed of changes is constantly increasing with no sign of reduction or downsizing. So that is very relevant, and that speed of change will grow exponentially, not linearly. There is another very important aspect that in a way was shared by some other speakers, and that is the interdependence as the major feature of modern international relations. In other words, the globalization with all positive effects has created a new security environment in which the growing number of unpredicted security challenges and threats that are mutually very linked is putting every modern country in the position not to be able to respond to those challenges on its own. So every country, regardless of its size and strength, is dependent upon the cooperation, and therefore the interdependence has become the major feature of modern international relations and security. In our part of the world that is known as a part that is producing more history than it could consume, regardless how we address and call our part of the world, it is very relevant that life is lived together, life is lived ahead, but is understood looking backwards. We cannot get rid of the past, and it's always relevant. And we have got to accept the fact that we cannot change that past, but we can influence the future. And I believe that the last century, and especially the last decade of the last century, was the best learning opportunity, even though it was probably a very bad century for the Balkans, a very bad century for peoples and countries making that part of the world, but those tragedies are great learning opportunities. We are not so willing to learn from somebody else's mistakes, but now we had the chance to learn from our own ones. And I believe we'll grab that opportunity, we'll learn from those mistakes, and despite many troubles we are facing on a daily basis, I do want to recognize a number of signs suggesting that we are learning from our mistakes. But it's demanding, it's time-consuming, and it's a lengthy process, it's a long way to go, but I do want to share realistic optimism with you that we can do better if we continue to improve the lessons learned from the times that are behind us. I believe the main lesson that we might learn from the security perspective is that the use of power and the war as an instrument was not benefiting anyone. Nobody won. It's the matter to what extent we lost. Here or there, some leaders could argue that they were winning at certain points. But on the long run, I guess the main lesson learned is that the war is not an option. The 20th century characterized the part of the world that we live in as an area of very intensive conflicts. But the last war that we waged in the 90s was the war without military presence of greater powers. So that is isolating our own experience to the extent that we have got to analyze ourselves, our attitude towards each of the state or ethnic group, and the attitude towards the other constituting the Western Balkans, the former Yugoslav state, or any future cooperation pattern or mechanism that we will have. But we have got to recognize that our part of the world has got a specific geopolitical, geoeconomical, and geocultural position. It is not only linking the Asia with Europe, the African Mediterranean with Central Europe, the Adriatic region with Black Sea region. It is linking the civilizations and cultures. It is linking, in a way, the past and the future. And we can benefit from that reality if we respect each other, cooperate with each other, and if we, in a way, a number of those globalized trends stick together. This is our chance. From Bosnian perspective, we see NATO and European Union being two separate but not separable structures. In the country with number of political disputes and differences, we have got a common ground on the issue of our European identity and Euro-Atlantic future. And that's a role model, the defense reform, the integration of three militaries that used to fight each other recently into one single force, into one Ministry of Defense that is effectively and capably responding to a number of different missions and tasks, both at home and abroad. We believe that we have defined a model how the ethnic interests, which at least as an excuse, were always used as an argument for clashes, for wars, are best protected and promoted by an effective and strong state-level institutions capable of bringing country into the family of progressive nations, making everyone better off, every citizen and every ethnic group of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is what we believe is very important. But this progress within Bosnia and Herzegovina was part of the region as a whole. I do believe that the nature of relationships in the region has significantly changed recently. Just remember the accession of Albania and Croatia into NATO was mostly positively commented and accepted within the countries of the region. Had that happened some decade ago, it would have created a lot of different comments and reactions than it really did 2 years ago. If we accept this pattern of cooperation, we'll be much more capable of combating cybersecurity challenges, ecological, and all other natural and man-made disasters that do not respect and recognize state borders. And the practice is making us to do so. And we are pretty much effective. I could assure you that there is a huge number of examples where we are increasingly cooperating on the regional issue. And the idea of creating a common peacekeeping unit that is composed of defense structures from the region is already ongoing. At the beginning of this year, we set in motion an idea of creating an ISAF unit which will incorporate members of armed forces of Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Albania. and it's already taking place. So it's encouraging, but potential chances for cooperation on the basis of mutual interest is very relevant. I guess we have tested the use of power scenario a number of times, and it is worthwhile reminding ourselves of the words of French Cardinal Richelieu, who used to say that in international relationships, the one who has got the power is right. The one who does not have power cannot prove neither to himself nor to the others that is right. And also, just to remind ourselves of the words of UK Prime Minister Disraeli, who argued that UK did not have no personal enemies, no personal friends, it only had personal interests. Following this logic, I could dare arguing that I believe that based on these promises of interest and benefits of cooperation, the part of the world that we are part of is going to be stronger integrated in 10 years' time than it used to be some 2 decades ago before the dissolution of a former country. I don't mean any kind of formal structure, but I assume the need for cooperation and the nature of relationship established on inherent and strong interests of the nations living in our part of the world. Willing to take some questions of yours if you have. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's rather nice to end this first part of the panel on a positive note, and especially to hear a kind of positive, upbeat message from Sarajevo. So thank you very much. Okay, well, it's now open to the floor. We have about, we've got 15, just a little over 15 minutes. So one thing, let's have some questions. We don't really need statements. So who's going to open? Who's got a question? Come on. We haven't got time to lose here. There must be somebody who's going to open the first question. Right, and please stand up and tell us who you are. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for very interesting, thought-provoking insights, all members of the panel. I am Rado Krčmaro, and I'm from Heidelberg University, Germany. I also work in Mannheim and cooperate with public and administration of Mannheim, city of Mannheim, Rhein-Neckar region. And I have a question to Mr. Pucha. He was mentioning cutting network of organized crime and cooperating in order to fight the organized crime. So speaking to German officials, because we've had in our pre-event session an excellent paper on organized crime in Bulgaria spreading its tentacles to European Union. So organized crime, Bulgarian organized crime is already in Mannheim, is already in Germany. But German officials would not cooperate with Bulgarian counterparts because there is a suspicion of policemen being also part of the organized crime structures that would hinder the credibility and legitimacy to cooperate with Bulgarian counterparts. It's a pity, of course, because Germans are limited in their possibility to fight these structures. So how then Austrians are handling this issue? And there was a discussion all the time during the 2 days about fighting organized crime and cooperating in fighting. How cooperate the Balkan states in order to fight these structures? Is it only at the level of political goodwill, or are there some precise policy measures that are being taken and already cooperation going on? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. I suggest actually, since that's a specific question for you, let's have 3 questions and then we'll deal with it. So next question. Okay, lady over there. Thank you.
I have impression. Professor Senka Savic from University of Novi Sad. I have impression that we are working in 2 worlds, namely No one from our panelists mentioned word gender at all. So I will repeat to all of you, what do we have in common, meaning women and men, and what part what in future Balkans or whatever topic of this session. It seems to me that we really are apart. So I would like to hear answer, no, we are not, but it seems to me yes.
Okay, and third question? Who's got a third question? Mr. Ivanovic, over to you.
I will wait for someone else.
Okay.
I have a question, to the Mr. Pucher, first of all, and the question is, how do you think that instability in Kosovo, that means in the whole region somehow, can be spread all over, can affect your internal stability, being the traditional, immigrant country? Many people from the Balkans are exactly, attempting even today to come into your country. And suddenly the question to Mr. Starova, the question is, would you imagine that Serbia will not change their mind about the Kosovo? Could you imagine that? And please, would you tell us what could be your approach, the Albanian approach in that sense? Because the Serbian very strong stance, there is no sign it is going to be changed. Would you just take that seriously in a consideration, and what could be your views on the future on the Western Balkans in that point of view?
Okay, thanks very much. Let's keep the answers short so we can have another round, and let's be provocative. It's no holds barred here. First of all, over to you, because you had two questions specifically directed to you and one for everybody. Okay.
Organized crime. Organized crime is somehow impeding the reputation of the countries in Austria perspective, in the population. They say, there is organized crime. This is not good for the reputation of the countries. This is somehow the sentimental feelings from there. So therefore, we have to cope, because it's also in our interest. And we do not only on the high level talks, but concrete measures flew from this Police Cooperation Convention in Southeast Europe, 2006. There's concrete measures. We embed police officers in other countries, police advisors. We do training together. So from the Austrian side, we tackle that proactively. Our Minister of Interior is in closest possible contact with the countries here. But it's not enough. We have the Seki Center in Bucharest. We have Interpol. The connection between and Interpol, what, to my understanding, I'm not an expert, could be improved. Data exchange. In this convention, it is regulated. But it's again a question of trust. You have to trust the other side if you convey the data. And this takes time and work and continuous energy. Women is not the question. I can mention just one sentence. Action plan is in most countries in development. There was a panel before. We also in Austria. And I would really have appreciated to sit here next to some ladies to speak about security. So from our Austrian point of view, empowerment of women, resolution 1325, action plans, we are on the track. And we help also others to develop this. Instability in Kosovo, no war, no fighting. Only can be solved through political means, no unilateral moves, try to buy time to negotiate. That's the only thing that we can do. Concerted effort of the international community. But obviously we are not totally effective. And what is so deplorable here, you said people are leaving this region, the countries. This enormous brain drain. The most energetic people are leaving. We profit from that. We have many leaders in business in Austria that come from this region. They are so energetic. Why is it not possible to keep all this energy here for the benefit of the region? So this is, I think, essential issue. Stability at home, only that will ensure prosperity. Stability requires negotiations, talks, understanding. And I noted down what the professor said. Love marriages is perhaps not the best. The best marriages are based on common interest. That's a saying in Austria. That I can say. I'm not the expert, I cannot solve it, but the Austrian position is totally clear. Negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. Sit together, like we did with Slovenia in one delicate issue that took us 70 years. 70 years to solve this bilingual, topographic, how I say it, issue between southern Austrian parts and the Slovenian language, the people living there.
All right, thank you very much. Over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. First, a couple of words for the question addressed to us by the lady there. In fact, substantially thinking and trying to touch the essence of the problem, there is, of course, no difference at all, because between women as capabilities and men's capabilities. It's a question of paradigms, it's a question of past experiences, it's a question of many prejudices that the women are not at the height of men today. And, for example, being pushed by a discussion I had just in the coffee break, where I learned that in Afghanistan probably there are more women in the parliament than at least in my country, Albania. I think that mainly there are two things. First, it's a question of political will. Even that I heard the opinion that the career for women is more facilitated in the military rather than in civilian life. I think that quotas might be used as a mechanism, even in civilian, and as a way of channelizing the political will. On the other side, the other element which is very much important is the individual will on the side of women as well. Because there are a lot of mentalities in our region which should be faded away. Why I use this expression? Because it can be done in a revolutionary way, but it means it will take some time. So, it's quite a resolvable problem. It needs some time, but first of all, we should fuel more the political will. We are doing something in Albania. We have to do much more, of course, because if Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General Catherine Babst mentioned the high capacity and talent of women in NATO, in general international organization, I have my personal experience not only in Albania but in our region, having met and have excellent experience of talented women in all the areas at least which I'm connected to. So this is what I think about that. The next question. I could, Oliver, give an answer, a very short answer, saying that I don't believe that Serbia is not going to recognize Kosovo. I could give another answer, thinking what could be done and so on, but be sure that we are not going to war. We are not having a war in the region, and you don't expect from Albania that Albania would do this or that harsh political attitude if Serbia would not recognize in time in Kosovo. But let me stick to the first answer. I think that Serbia will recognize Kosovo. I'm sorry again to say or to be so direct. Don't ask me about argument about that, and that's, I think, something which goes without saying. But this is my feeling, this is how I guess it, and I'm the type of man that move a lot in the region, have a lot of friends, not only in Serbia, but anywhere, and so I think that my feeling should be considered a little bit. That's my That's my answer.
Thank you very much. Now, we are a couple of minutes from the ending, so I'm going to look at Mrs. Licht here and say, with your permission, perhaps we'll have two more questions, and then I'm going to ask everyone to stay in their seats, including the panel, because then we're going to hand over directly to Mrs. Licht. Okay, we've got two more questions. Okay, it's a lady over there. Thank you.
I wanted to give chance to some of participants and not organizers. My name is Sonja Stojanovic, Belgrade Center for Security Policy. One quick question. How can Balkans not be forgotten, but not be someone that gets interest just as a source of problems? So how could we be supported in next period and be on agenda, both in Europe, US, but not because of problems?
That's a good question. And the second question, the lady there, please.
Svetlana Đurđević-Lukić, Institute of International Politics and Economics. As it seems that the panelists will not have time to comment on each other's statements, I would like to ask representatives from the region, especially Mr. Serova and Mr. Puchovsky, to comment on Professor Siroka's assessment that the Americans are not interested in resolving the remaining issues in the Balkans, and that we shouldn't look at Washington for that.
Okay, thank you very much for keeping that short. Well, why don't we start with you? Would you like to start, Mr. Puchovsky, or Mr. Sikic? Do you want to comment on how to keep the Balkans from being forgotten? No? Okay, well, who'd like to start then? Go ahead.
I just have a very quick comment on it, and I don't mean to be flippant, but the way to get positive attention is to do positive deeds. And for example, this conference is a good example of a positive step that over time and cumulatively will bring positive attention to the region and the nations in it. I also have a quick comment on the question about women and others' role in security. I think the important point is to have inclusivity, not to have segmentation. And that means men and women are included, the young and old are included, urban and rural are included, rich and poor are included. And just for a quick comment, one of the problems I think with the old Yugoslavia was that instead of being included, each of these groups were segmented. And I think that was that contributed to the other problems in the region.
There was a specific question from Svetlana directed to you and to you, Mr. Puchovsky. Would you like to go ahead, Professor Puchovsky? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, two things. First, if you see what the surveys of public opinion have shown, you'll spot the real difference between this so-called Balkan area and the other parts of Europe. Security was never an important issue for the people living in this area. Heroic deeds, fighting for freedom, friendship, whatever, but security was never an important issue. As long as for the average people security is, in whatever term, security is not the crucial issue, this area is going to be the source of problems and not the element of partnership. You can have one or another type of politician, they can change things one or another way, up to a point, of course. But this is the element in which people will say, okay, for justice, freedom, my country, socialism, or my church, I'm going to kill, rather than enjoy security. And that's, I think, the problem. And this is what we have deep in the mind of people living here in the area. Another side of this is the question of making them to understand how important we are, or the question of attention. Unfortunately, we have seen that there are only two ways to be important from this part of the world in the other parts of the world: massive killing or sports results. There is no third way. It's either Milosevic or Djokovic for Serbia. There is no third way. Of course, I'm always on Djokovic's side, but that is the reality. And when we come to killing, you have to see a very interesting analysis published a few years ago in London, showing that you have to kill 25,000 of Bangladeshis to get the level of attention in the international media which you can have with killing one American. And by the way, 350 Croats. They measured seconds and centimeters in the press and in the media. And this is why we were really interesting in the world when the killing has started. And I hope this is not going to happen ever again, of course. And on the other hand, the guys like Djokovic cannot be found so easily. So I can conclude with a joke I've heard from Macedonia this morning. They ask a guy, where are you coming from? And he says, from Macedonia. And they say, where is Macedonia? And the answer is in semifinals, because they're now in semifinals of the championship in basketball. And this is much more precise definition than any kind of geographic term between Bulgaria, Albania, this, and so on and so on and so on. Not to mention Serbia, of course.
There was a question for you there. Thank you.
It is my opinion, but of course Professor Shiroki has its own opinion, but I guess that probably when the professor said that the Americans are not interested in the region, it should not be understood completely like that or strictly like that. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong because the professor is here, but this is my guess. Why? I have some reasons for that, at least some, there are many, but United States have that position, everybody know here, no need to comment, and it's very impossible that they are not interested in the Balkans, but of course the problems in the Balkans will be eventually resolved by the Balkan people and Balkan country itself. This has forever been like that, even that at certain moments the intermediation has been some kind of stronger than before. Dayton Agreement, Kosovo intervention, this and that, and many other. But I think that always in the long run it's the consensus in the region, politicians, people, countries anyway, that give the last green light for something to be done and for the change. In that sense, I think that they will be present for as long they will be in that position, not only in the Balkans, but anywhere. Of course, the focus might shift here and there, because that's policy. Out of a myriad of problems we have in this world, of course, we are obliged, because of lack or scarcity of means, whatever means, to prioritize. And in that sense, of course, from the Balkans to Maghreb countries, before that, Afghanistan, Iraq, I don't know, whatever, in that sense, but the interest will be always there. For example, I have an example. They are very much involved in the problems the Balkan has. For example, let's refer to the dispute over the name of Macedonia, Greece, Macedonia. Americans are very much in intermediation and so on. It's another thing that it is taking very long, and I don't know how there are optimism and then immediately pessimism again, but they are very much involved in that. And also for many other questions. Even that, as I mentioned, this problem would think that that dispute over the name shouldn't have become an insurmountable obstacle for integrating Macedonia in NATO and in EU. The mechanisms for doing this integration at a normal pace without waiting to be resolved, the dispute should have been found. But I can't say more than that. Of course, it's not up to me to find the mechanism. I can only comment on that. But to come back to, I think that they will be interested, but with those detailed comments I made during my...
Thank you very much. And I'm going to now call things to an end. But I would like, as I said, everybody to stay where they are. And I think we can only conclude that we are perhaps today fatefully on the cusp. I mean, plenty of disputes left, or one where people might even start hitting each other, if not worse, today, which could set the trend for the future, but hopefully not. But on the other hand, we're talking about Balkan battalions. So thank you very much, and now I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Licht. Thank you, I'm looking forward to hearing. But stay here, because everyone should stay in their seats. Yeah, that's the